We're going on an adventure. No, that's not right. We're going on an adventure. No. We're going on a bear hunt. No. I'd just like to say we're going on an adventure. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be tough. And at the end of it, you may well be fired. This is a trailer reaction to a new Lord of the Rings trailer. And this is a Lord of the Rings trailer for a film that's going to be released at the cinema. Yeah, this isn't one of the new ones that they've announced, like the Gollum film or anything like this. This has got nothing to do with Amazon Prime's Rings of Power. Though, point taken, Nenad. Need to get down with the bathos and the pathos of the whole kind of thing. Nenad made a very strong point, a friend of mine, about how to approach fantasy franchises. There are those fantasy franchises that want to send themselves up. I'm thinking of things like superhero films, Marvel, that kind of thing, the cinematic universe. Then there's the kind of brutalist, kind of almost kind of modern in its kind of implementation and execution horror. And I would put sort of Game of Thrones in that and The Last of Us in that and that sort of thing, where it's kind of visceral and it's genuinely kind of threatening. But then there's the sort of purposefully beautiful, incredibly sort of bucolic, incredibly kind of romanticized fantasy. And I think, Nina, you made a very valid point, which is that is a Tolkien, that is a sort of, not only Tolkien, that's a sort of C.S. Lewis kind of fantasy, isn't it? It's a different type of fantasy. And so we can't really judge everything by the same standard. With that point taken on board, I will reacquaint myself with the Rings of Power when it comes out to see if I can enjoy it in a slightly different way. Now, I loved the original Peter Jackson films, Lord of the Rings, and I loved his The Hobbit, though I felt he did stretch what was essentially a perfectly formed shorter story into something far too big and sort of you know, burdensome in a sense, because I think what made The Hobbit so great was its small subject, small character, and small sort of treatment, if you like. And then Lord of the Rings felt like such a nice sort of extension of that. That's how I experienced the whole Tolkien oeuvre when I was young. Now, this film is interesting. This is Peter Jackson sanctioned. I think it's Peter Jackson produced, is it? I think he's in there somewhere. And this is a anime reimagining of a prequel moment in the Lord of the Rings universe prior to the Fellowship of the Ring, prior to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So this has the blessing, if you like, of Peter Jackson. It's directed by a chap called Kenji Kamiyama, who I believe was involved with, is it Ghost in the Shell? Also Blade Runner, Black Lotus. And now he's responsible for this film. And it's a kind of mashup. But the idea of the Lord of the Rings and anime is a curious thing for me because it speaks to, ironically, the very, very original. When I was young, when I was a child, there was huge excitement. I remember around the time when I must have read Lord of the Rings, there was an animated version, or they tried to make the Lord of the Rings once. They didn't get too far with it. It was like, it was a kind of, there was one film and they hardly got anywhere with the story. But it was done it was an incredibly, let me find out the details of it. Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it came out in 1978. It was directed by Ralph Bakshi. And although it didn't get far into the story, it was an incredibly well-crafted and impressive kind of animation. It used remarkable kind of techniques. It used traditional cell animation, but it also used rotoscoped live action footage. So you had a sense of real life bodies behind the kind of footage. Anyway, I'm not saying this film is like that, but there is a tradition. It's the only other moment where I can think of, animation, expressive animation being used to kind of realise Middle-earth and Tolkien's world, which kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, Tolkien did all those beautiful watercolours and there are all those drawings that go with it. It lends itself well to a total fictional representation and animated representation. So this is Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. And it's set 183 years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It features the story of Helm Hammerhand, legendary king of Rohan, and I think he's voiced by Brian Cox, he of Succession. Anime could be cool, this could be interesting. Interestingly, if you think of big franchises that have been touched by manga, hasn't there been a Star Wars series? Is it Star Wars Visions that's kind of been touched by it? And I'm pretty sure there was a short on Netflix, on Disney Plus, wasn't there, of Grogu by Studio Ghibli. So anyway, this could be amazing. Ironically, I've got a funny feeling, without having even seen a single frame of it, I've got a funny feeling that this could end up actually being more successful than the new Amazon Prime series. Who knows? Who knows? So let's check this out. We're going on an adventure. God, it's so dated now, doesn't it? The original. Oh. Kenji Kamiyama.
All Middle-earth knows the tale of the War of the Ring. But 200 years before that...
Riders of the Mark! Brothers of Rohan!
There was an older tale.
Arise!
We come with an offer to strengthen Rohan.
Hera, daughter of Helm, I, Wolf, seek your hand in marriage.
Ooh.
Our fathers speak as if I were not even in the room. I do not want to marry you.
You do not seek an alliance. You seek a throne. You will live to regret this, old man. He's dead?
What?
You will pay for this with your life.
The boy I knew would never wish for war.
The boy you knew is gone.
Fire!
There's so many of them. I pledged to fight for my king.
You know nothing of war.
I'm the fastest rider you have.
People need hope, Hera. Something to believe in.
My pride. My joy. You could rule the world. You think I am afraid of you?
You should be.
What does Mordor want with rings?
That wasn't. What does Mordor want with rings? Yeah, if this was 183 years, that couldn't be Gollum, could it? Well, I have to say, it feels like, what does it feel like? It was reminding me of, does anyone remember the 1980s TV series, 1970s, 80s TV series of Dungeons and Dragons, which was a very kind of soft-edged version of the role-playing game. But it had that sort of vibe to it. There's a simplicity. Studio Ghibli does Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Studio Ghibli does Middle-earth. I suppose I was expecting to see more sort of expressionism in the style of anime. I kind of think I kind of built things up a bit by referring back to the 1978 animated version, which really was, if you go back to it, quite groundbreaking, though I haven't seen it since I was probably about 12. But I remember thinking, oh, how did they do that? Wasn't feeling any how did they do that? But you know what? Going back to the thing I was just saying before we watched that, it's interesting, this is interesting, because if you think about it, the Peter Jackson success with his films and the Rings of Power Season 2 that's about to land, we're convincingly taken to Middle-earth through excessive and astonishing, yes, real scenery. I mean, that clip at the front there where they kind of back-reference the original films. God, how dated did they look? I mean, a normal shot of them riding on a horse. You know, the landscape, the world, the universe lends itself well to being digitally enhanced and digitally created. And in a sense, you know, CGI is a modern form of animation, animated. So taking it, so you're not pretending to be lifelike and taking it right back to sort of, let's just go full anime. It felt nice. It felt neat. I can't work out, though, whether I felt the characterization, actually, oddly, the whole thing lacked that bathos or pathos or sincerity. So now I'm being really difficult. Whereas I was critical of the Rings of Power trailer because I thought, oh, they're all taking it so seriously. This is like amateur dramatics for Shakespeare. And then this, maybe it felt a little bit too colloquial and a little bit too, you know, from the hip. Anyway, I thought that looked quite exciting. I've got a funny feeling this could actually be hugely successful and could actually prefigure a massive revisioning, re-envisaging of Lord of the Rings. Are we going to have, with the Lord of the Rings franchise, a reverse of what Disney are doing with live-action remakes? Could we end up having an animated, non-live-action remake of the Lord of the Rings films? Now there's something to conjure with, my preciouses.